I am at a Audio Engineering Society program this evening, and I'm in this recording studio. Just a second, and I'll let you guys in.
Oh no, you're good. You're good.
I zoomed to this room real quick because I had seen this grand piano before. Yeah, it's very nice. So I'm gonna be doing some things around here so you can see this recording facility. This is where I'll get some better shots, but this is where Bob and Tom, the studio that makes all the Bob and Tom CDs and music over the years, used to be called TRC Studios. I guess they still make CDs for the Bob and Tom show. So I was invited here by our chief engineer at Wolfboom Radio, Sean Mattingly, but he decided for some reason to not come and leave me by myself here. Now, this is the larger studio. Lots of guys from the Audio Engineering Society here, and I'll go around and get some other things for us to look at here in a minute. Okay, so the name of this place is called the Static Shack. And as you come in the front door, you can see some of the Bob and Tom artwork that's been produced. Everybody my age, at least, remembers Mr. Obvious and Donnie Baker. And here's a Bob and Tom sideshow. So anyway, let me just kind of move in here. Some of these rooms are a little dark, so we'll do the best we can here. Here's some more CDs that are put together. Move into the big studio so you can take a look, and I'll be quiet there. Let's see, where do I go? I got to go through up the stairs here.
Yeah, we got. That's fair.
Everybody's coming in this room.
And I'd never been up to your guys.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Nice setup.
Are you with the audio?
With the Roundtable recording.
What's that?
Studio in Broad Ripple.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's like the only way I know the other.
Okay, let's come in here. And I'm gonna just kind of walk through. This is all their electronics, patch bay right here.
No, that already happened. Oh yeah.
Over here, and this is the
Duke threw me a solo
mixer. And you're going out there to record through the windows. That's where the performers would be.
We start off on the tune, and I'm playing along. I've only had the mandolin for 3 weeks at this point.
It's got software here for the mic console.
Playing along, and Mark gives me the. I was like, all right, I'm in.
And this is the software they're using here is Cubase.
And it says take it.
Cubase
And I got
Pro,
about 3 notes
which
in the Andy
is
Griffith
cool.
theme and locked up.
And then you got a keyboard here.
Taking it back.
Bob made some joke about.
I'm going to try to, I guess I can't get all the way back there.
there.
But let's just listen to these guys talk for a minute. I'll get out of the way.
Okay.
I played 2 songs at Bob's, Larry and Steve.
Do we have a quorum?
Do we have
Enough people here? My name's Jeff Gardner. I was somehow drafted to be on the executive committee of the local section of AES a couple of years ago. And tonight you're going to get to see where I was a lot of the 80s. I came here in 83, stayed on staff a few years, was freelance after that, still did a lot of work here in this and what was the back room. And when I got here, this gentleman was already here because he's only had one job in his entire life. And I'm going to let him tell you about his life and the studio, and you're going to play some stuff.
Yeah, I'll play a few things.
Turn it over to Alan Johnson.
One, thank everybody for coming. Bob, good to see you. I'm Alan Johnson. I've been in the only engineer in this room for at least 25 years, and for a while we had staff, and the business changes. But I started out. I grew up playing brass instruments. I had hillbilly musicians on both sides of the family. I had no intention of having a career in music. I was going to manage a Sears store. I worked at Sears in high school and college, and I loved it, and they seemed to love me, and that's what I was going to school to get a business degree. And I quite possibly might have been the most unmotivated student Ball State ever had. But a roommate of mine was in a band, So I started hanging around there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was downhill from there. But honestly, I was reading Rolling Stone magazine one day, probably cutting class, probably stoned, and there was an ad in the back that said, "You can be a recording engineer for the Full Sail," who didn't even have their own studio at the time. And I mean, it hit me like a bolt of lightning. It's like, shit, that's what I want to do. So I went to Full Sail in the summer, came back, started school and working at Sears, driving to every studio, Dayton, Cincinnati, Louisville, Indianapolis, Champaign, knocking on doors. I work for free. Got an internship here at downtown at TRC Studios. So now I've got to tell my folks that I'm quitting school for the second time, by the way. And my folks were divorced, so I had to make 2 phone calls. Called my mom first, and that was an easy phone call. She had some questions, but it was one of those, well, honey, whatever you want to do, it sounds like you have a good plan. So now I've got to call my dad, and my dad's a barber in a 1-room old school barber shop. He's the only barber. You come in on Saturday, you wait your turn, you get a haircut. I waited to call him until noon on Saturday because I knew the barber shop would be packed.
Close that window down.
And it would cut down on some of the yelling that he was going to do. And I was completely wrong about that. But so in one phone call, I tell him I've quit school, I've quit my job, I've given up my apartment, I've moved to Indianapolis, I'm going to live with my girlfriend's mom, I've taken a job working in a recording studio for free, and last night somebody hit me and totaled my car. All true. One phone call.
Yeah.
I tell people that he was completely supportive from day 2 on. Day 1 was a little rough, but nonetheless. So, I started out as an intern and taking any gig that came through the door. The owner at the time, God rest his soul, liked to trade studio time for certain recreational products, which was good for him and honestly great for me because I got all those projects. So it was a lot of the stuff I cut my teeth on was, shots line deals, and I'm internally grateful. But he could not have been more supportive. He was really good to me. So you just start building a clientele. One of the first big breaks I got was the chief engineer at the time had just had a baby and didn't want to work nights, and I got a Duke Tomato record, and that was huge. And as it turns out, I've worked on every Duke Tomato record since 1983, I've had a bunch of great. I'm most proud of the clients that I've had long relationships with. Duke Tomato, I've done everything he's done since '83. I've done everything Larry Crane's ever done since he left John Mellencamp's band, even before he left John's band. I've worked on every Bob and Tom record since 1989. It's just, the client. It's easier to keep a client than it is to get a new one, and I'm sure I'm leaving some people out, but it's, and so here I am. That's it in a nutshell. I've had a couple. I think we've had 2 platinum and 1 gold with Rodney Carrington. Michael produced and I engineered with Rodney Carrington. I've had a #1 blues and roots record in Australia with a band I produced from there, they were just great.
They're return customers too, right?
Yeah, I've mixed several. They send me stuff to mix every once in a while. They were on tour here, and we met, and through a mutual friend, and we did 1 song, and then that came out really great, and so they came back the next year to cut an entire album, 3 weeks. To be able to block out the room and work on one thing for 3 weeks, it just doesn't happen anymore. It was so much fun. The accents, the different words. They were all great musicians and really took care of one another. Every night, we didn't take a dinner. We'd take a dinner break, but we didn't go out. Everybody just stayed around here. and they'd go out and get food and bring it back. We'd all have the same thing. And they'd all have just a little bit of wine and a proper piece of chocolate. But yeah, that was a bunch of fun. I've had 2 #1 records with Pat Godwin, 2 musical comedy records with Pat, and starting a new one next week. So, and he's got a 3rd one coming out next Friday. So, questions?
What kind of stuff are you working on these days?
Well, I'll play you a couple things that I've finished here. There's a song with Andrew Young. I'm working on a new Andrew Young song today, but I'll play you the one that was actually up for Grammy consideration for the Grammy nomination consideration for a Grammy. Consideration for a nomination, I guess is how it goes. Anyway, yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
When you play what we're going to hear,
Uh-huh.
you had mentioned to me earlier that you don't use those large monitors up there anymore.
No, haven't had them hooked up for 25 years or more.
Okay, so what will you be using? The Gen X?
We'll listen to the Gen X.
Okay, the question is why don't you use those? Because those look very impressive, and,
Well, they look
from
they
the
look
80s, I think.
Well, when this
was
room was built, there
interesting.
was no such thing as a powered monitor.
Okay,
Powered monitors didn't come around until 1990 or 91.
those aren't
with-
powered
with
then.
Meyer HD1s. Yeah, we got those speakers, the amp, the crossover, and something.
All right.
Frequent got hit by lightning, and it was going to be $1,000 to get them fixed. At that point, I'd already been working pretty exclusively on the Gen X, and I thought, why spend $1,000 on something?
Well, plus, didn't you lose a tweeter or two?
Yeah.
You
There's a
would've had
high
to pull
frequency
those
drive.
puppies out.
Yeah, it's
We're not doing that.
no.
And what's the model of those speakers up there?
JBL,
JBL.
4435s.
Okay, there they are over there.
They were.
And there's another one over
They
here.
they were not. They kind of got. How do I want to say this? We had a pair at the downtown studio, and I think they just decided. The guy that built the studio did not want to use those speakers. He wanted Uri 813s. Is that 811s or 813s?
It's the Russ Berger room.
Yeah, this is the Russ Berger room. That's what Russ wanted to use, but since we had those speakers, the owners decided, well, we're going to use those speakers. And I did, Russ wanted, in the design, the speaker was supposed to come all the way out to the edge. And there was some miscommunication about how things were built, and at that point it was too late. So we lived with them the way
Well,
they
they
were.
worked to the edge until the acoustic stretch panels went in.
Yeah, until the foam went in, they were doing all right. So yeah, I just decided not to use them. The powered monitors, they get plenty loud enough. I've got a sub. I have a sub on them, and I don't need it to get 100 dB in here.
What dB do you mix at? Typically.
Loud for me is 90.
Okay.
That's
where I start in the car.
It depends. Yeah. It depends on time of day. Toward the end of the day, I probably finish a little louder.
Okay.
My favorite time to assess a mix is I like to work on something and give it a little time, whether it's the next morning or a couple days later. And if I come in and I set them, I don't know what dB it is, but I got a spot where I set them where it's really quiet. And it's kind of like my uncle told me about fish in a farm pond. He goes, that first cast is the best cast you'll have all day. So you got to sneak up on a farm pond. I'm not much of a fisherman, but it seems to apply to this, because I'll come in and just barely crack the monitors, listen to the Gen X, and that's, for me, the most revealing mix. That's when something's going to pop out for me. As the day goes on, your ears get used to hearing things, and you can miss something. But that first mid-volume listen in the morning, for me, is really revealing. So
you're mixing with Cubase? Is that the software you're
I
using?
use Cubase.
Okay.
As does Jeff and
Right, Eddie?
Chris Dobbs. Yeah, he's a Cubase guy.
That's primarily a synthesizer software, isn't it?
No, it started out as a sequencing program, but it's a robust.
It was actually out before Pro Tools.
It's
Okay.
I've used them all
Uh-huh.
to some extent, and I switched from, I had two Pro Tools systems and switched in 2003. You know, as a friend put it, he said, well, you could buy a new Pro Tools system, and he knew what I mean. I needed 48 inputs and blah, you know, all that, and so it's going to be a pretty big system. He said, you could buy a new Pro Tools rig, or you could buy a new Cubase rig and a new car. And I thought, and then a friend of mine, Gary Milkey, he said, as I was thinking about it, I'd cut a record on the Trident console that we had and ADATs. He goes, why don't we digitize it? And why don't you mix this record in the box? And it took me about an hour to be sold. I was like, okay, this is, and yeah, it's and all for whatever it's worth. All the guys at Sweetwater will tell you that Cubase is the best sounding software.
I spent 13 years doing tech support for it. All I can say is that it's about the math, and they were the first ones to start doing 32-bit floating point, and the Germans are good at math. And the audio engine we used to put up, especially back in the day, I mean 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it wasn't even close. You could just put up stems flat and listen in different DAWs, and it was... That's I'm retired from working there, but it's still my number one DAW.
So yeah, I've been thrilled with it.
I don't know if as a digital audio workstation software, but the keyboards that I buy come with Cubase, a Cubase software.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the free
Like an LE or Studio.
Yeah, something like that. I found it very hard to install. I never got it right. Yeah.
I've had an issue or two here or there, but you know, there's an issue or two with every piece of software.
Sure.
Eddie's a Cubase user too, aren't you?
It acts like a tape machine.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm using the $99 version of it, and there's only one thing I've found so far that it won't do that yours does.
Alan, what about the small speakers? Because that was a revelation.
Those are tones and the stereo receiver that drive them since 1983.
Huh.
And I still do a lot of work on them. I like listening to them.
Yeah.
They're not fun, but if it's just me cutting vocals and we'll be cutting, and if there's a producer or other band members in the control room, I don't use them. But if it's just me, you know, I just look at it as I can hear everything the way I want to hear it, and it's saving my ears.
Are they 3 or 4 inch?
Oh, I don't know. 4 inch, 3
Yeah, I
inch.
think-
Anybody?
I think there's a 4 all the way to the outside of the.
Any technical question you ask me, I'm probably going to answer with I don't know. I just turn the knobs until it sounds good. that's kind of my mode on everything. But that'll be my answer. But feel free to ask. Somebody in here will have the answer.
I have a non-technical question.
Shoot.
Can you talk a little bit about the diffusion,
The quadratic
deflection, or
diffusers,
what
that's
that is?
technical. Yeah, that's technical.
Is it? Okay.
It's the same math concept as the stealth bomber. It's supposed to create the illusion that no back wall is there. There are 1,000 other. You know, this was very much in vogue in the mid '80s.
Well, D'Antoni was one of the first to even do that.
Yeah.
You know.
So yeah, these were pretty much the first diffusers out there. And you know, it works well for me. Were I to build another room from scratch, probably wouldn't do it, but may do it just because it's what I'm used to. But it's a good sounding control room. It's not. I mean, if you sit on the couch or stand back there, it's not. You know, or sit on the sides, it's welcome to Bass World. But from back here or from my chair, it sounds great. And I've never been a believer. You know, we used to try to make when in the '80s and early '90s when we were using the big speakers a lot. There was this thing about I want it to sound good everywhere in the control room, and I look back on it and think, why? You know, it's really you can't. I mean, there's only one real good spot, and there's a couple other decent spots, but it's not going to sound good sitting on the sides, and if it does, you've got a problem. So
Well, where would you position me if I'm going to tape your sound that you're going to play?
probably right there.
Right there is the best place.
Yeah, probably in the center.
I'm going to go over there now.
That's the money.
Thank you.
That's the money seat. Yeah.
Thank you.
Are you using the D2000 as your monitor controller?
Just as and a Cubase controller.
Gotcha.
Okay, here we go. Sit in the sweet spot.
This
Stand
is,
in the sweet spot.
Feel free to move around the room because I don't know what's going to sound like back there.
Let's see what we got here with a little zoom.
This is a single. This is actually a remake of a tune from what's the name of the band? Stained. The band. So this is a cover of one of their songs.
Oh yeah, man. Come on, slide in here.
Symphony players. Troy Kennett wrote the chart for this. A few members of the symphony playing on it.
Okay.
Somebody sit in the chair.
And you bring me to my knees again. All the times that I could beg you, please, in vain. All the times that I felt insecure for you, and I lay my burdens at the door. But I'm on the outside, I'm looking in. I can see through you, see your true colors. 'Cause inside you're ugly like me. I can see through you, see through the real you. All the times that I felt like this morning, it's for you, and I taste what I could never have. It was from you all the time.
Okay, so while the rest of the guys are in the studio there, they're going to play another piece of music. I thought I'd come in here. I'm going to walk a couple feet here, and then I'm going to turn, and you can see where we just were. There's the guys around the mixer, and they're talking shop there. They're going to play another piece of music. But normally, this area is where, if they're going to record a band members will be in this area. This is the performance area. And the microphones. Let's see. I doubt if I'll know what this is. But no, I can't get close enough to it. But there's one of the vocal mics. Sean Mattingly might know what that is. As I said, he invited me to this function this evening, and he's a no-show, so he kind of stood me up on this little event. But that's okay. I'll get him back one of these days. Here we got a couple of. This is where they're going to record the singers. If you got a vocal to do. They're mostly music here. But you would do a voiceover in here. Okay, here's the microphone. This is a manly microphone. And so in there's the guys. There's windows here, so you got a lot of reflections. But the producer and director would be in there. And so let's go see in here again. Where it's a little quiet. I think, and they've got here's another booth right here for recording narrations or vocals. And then I think there's one more, maybe not. And there's where the pianos were, where I started. Right there is where we started. A lot of lights in here, a lot of reflections. Let's go over to this microphone set here and see what we got. And Sean probably know what that is. I can't read it. Lots of different mics for different uses. And you've all got the screens here for keeping peas from popping. I don't know what that is. And then over here, this is where the keyboards were again. You've got a really nice vintage Fender Rhodes electronic piano here, right there. Now, when I was in high school, I had a grand piano on the right, just like this, and the Fender Rhodes beside here, and I played The Raven by Alan Parsons. I played both of these keyboards. This was on the left hand and the piano was on the right. Kids went wild, standing ovation. Had a lot of interested girls at the time that suddenly took notice of me. That's stories for another time. Well, that's a wrap from me for this evening. I'm Mike Rhodes from MunseyJournal.com.